Hey guys, Rob here with McDojo Life. In today's McDojo news, we're going to talk about an MMA fighter who was convicted of killing an escort in California. But this story gets a little strange, so stay to the end so that way we can dissect a little bit. Let's check out the story. A Santa Ana man was convicted today of killing an escort in a Newport Beach office building at the end of 2015. Nain Isaac Nieto Hernandez, age 36, was convicted of second-degree murder on December 18th of 2015 for the killing of 23-year-old Sari Alcaraz of Long Beach. He's currently scheduled to be sentenced October 7th. Jurors who were given the option to consider voluntary manslaughter and involuntary manslaughter deliberated for about 2 days before reaching a verdict. Police were called just after midnight to an architectural firm's offices when an escort service reported one of its employees missing, according to a trial brief filed by Deputy District Attorney Robert Goodkin. When officers arrived, they encountered Jordan Beltran, a driver for Siren Entertainment. He said he drove Alcaraz to the office at 10 p.m. and walked her to the door, but ducked around the corner because the client asked her to arrive without a chaperone. Once Alcaraz was in the office, she texted him at 10:29 p.m. saying she got the money and was coming out, Goodkin said. While waiting for her to emerge, Beltran said he saw a man leave the business, so he approached him. But he appeared nervous and returned into the office building and locked the door. The man, Hernandez, exited again and locked the door behind him. And when Beltran confronted him about Alcaraz's whereabouts, Hernandez said she robbed him and he didn't know where she was, Goodkin said. When Beltran pressed him on where she was, Hernandez got very nervous and left in a white minivan and drove away, Goodkin said. When Beltran could not contact Alcaraz on the phone, he called the escort service. About 30 minutes later, Beltran said he saw Hernandez return in the minivan. And when he asked him again about the victim, Hernandez said he saw her hiding in some bushes nearby before the defendant fled. The escort service then called the police. The police found the victim stuffed in a trash can in a supply closet. Hernandez worked there as a janitor. The victim sustained severe head and facial trauma, and blood was running from both ears and her nose, Goodkin said. Police found the defendant's driver's license at the scene, and they also recovered a Smith & Wesson semi-automatic pistol. Hernandez was arrested at about 10:30 a.m. December 30th, and the defendant's father told police that his son said he was robbed at gunpoint, and a struggle over the weapon ensued before he punched her, and she died, Goodkin said. He also stated, "It should be noted that this did not match the DNA results for the firearm or text messages from the defendant's phone about the gun." Hernandez, who was a mixed martial arts fighter, testified that he acted in self-defense when she attempted to rob him and that he shoved her but did not punch her. Other clients of the escort service that night reported they complained that the woman advertised did not match who showed up for the date, Goodkin said. Some demanded their money back. In his closing arguments, Goodkin said Hernandez, as an undocumented immigrant, did not call 911 when the victim died, but instead feared deportation more than wanting to save the victim. He doesn't want to call the police, Goodkin said. There's a dead young girl in there. Goodkin rejected Hernandez's testimony that he just pushed the victim, and the prosecutor argued that the defendant punched her. He also discounted that the entire operation was a bait and switch, with the escort not matching the person advertised. Here, none of that happened. She comes in, and he's ready to have sex with her right away, Goodkin said. The problem here started when she wasn't ready to have sex with him. There's no problem with, "You're not the girl from the advertisement." Defense attorney Cameron Talley attacked the prosecution's case, particularly the testimony of the forensic pathologist Dr. Yong-Sun Kim. Talley said the prosecution argued that the defense tried to claim the facial injury was possibly rug burn, but the defense attorney noted that was Kim's theory in the case at some point. "It was never part of our theory," Talley said. "The prosecution stands up here and says it's a crazy theory, and it is, but we've never proposed that. So it's frustrating to hear things that are so mischaracterized and misrepresented." Talley argued his client was the victim. "This case is not about prostitution. There's no prostitution going on here. None. Zero. Zip," Talley said. "This is not a scam. This is a criminal enterprise." Talley said the plan was to do a bait and switch and have the muscle come and get the money. Not once did she sell her body. Not once did she try to sell her body. She was somebody who was engaged in a criminal enterprise, and Beltran is there to collect. Talley argued that Hernandez was a perfect victim because no John was going to call the police. Mr. Hernandez was the fifth victim that night. Let's unpack that. First of all, the defense attorney in this case is a huge piece of garbage. I get that he's just doing his job, but listen to what he said. He tried to blame the dead prostitute for what happened to the dead prostitute. Like, oh, it was an old bait and switch and they were going to strong arm him. She was in there for 30 minutes and the door wasn't locked up to that point. It was completely open. If they were going to strong arm the dude, or at least hold him up at gunpoint, they would have done it immediately and left, or killed him. It didn't end up that way. The prostitute was the one who died. But in any case, no matter what went down or how it went down, you can't deny that she ended up dead. That's a fact, which is why he actually was convicted, because beyond a reasonable doubt, he definitely was the one that killed her. It seems like it's a pretty clear-cut case of murder. She went in, he kills her, and then all of a sudden there's a trial, he gets convicted, he's going to jail for it. But that's not the strangest thing here, and that's not really the thing that I wanted to kind of deep dive into. There's something else that's odd. Whenever I do these stories, I do a lot of research. I don't just do one story from one article, I actually look at a lot of different articles, and one thing that I found strange was almost every article I originally found, which is what I look for in general, is martial arts related content. Every one of those martial arts related articles about this called this man an MMA fighter. I've covered a story about an MMA fighter previously. I mean, I've covered a lot of stories about MMA fighters over the years, but one particular one I covered, I actually was contacted by someone who was a training partner of that guy. That guy who contacted me, who was his training partner, was upset because he felt like MMA fighters were being misrepresented because he said that guy himself was not an MMA fighter. That guy that contacted me said, hey, that guy never had any fights. Well, I researched, and after talking back and forth with him, he did have fights, but he had one amateur fight. The person who contacted me's gripe was that was a misrepresentation of MMA fighters. It was showing that all MMA fighters were bad. Now, I didn't agree, and we had a back and forth conversation, but I did see his point. What makes someone a legitimate MMA fighter, and how many fights do you really need to have to be considered legit? So that brings me back to the case that I'm covering right now. And a lot of these, for instance, Bloody Elbow or SB Nation, they covered it and they called him an MMA fighter. A website called MMA News also addressed him as an MMA fighter. So with these news articles calling this guy an MMA fighter, you would figure it'd be easy to find out what his MMA record is. So I went on Tapology. I took his name, and you can look up pretty much any fighter there. I'm not saying every fighter is there, but usually if you have a history of fights, you can find them there. So I put his name into Tapology, and as an MMA fighter, nothing popped up. So I was like, well, that's strange. He didn't pop up on Tapology. Maybe I can go to ShareDog. And on ShareDog, you can do the same thing. So I put his information in ShareDog, and yet again, nothing popped up. Typed his name into Google, went all the way through Google as much as I could, found absolutely nothing about this man ever having a fight, either amateur or pro. So of course, sometimes it's not written about. Maybe I can find some video at least. Usually there's at least a video. Went on YouTube, typed in his name, went to searching forever, and guess what? Absolutely nothing again. So the real problem I had with all of this is the fact that this guy, in a lot of these articles, is labeled as an MMA fighter. Where? Like, what MMA fight did this dude have? Because if you look on outside news sources, a lot of the other news sources barely even grazed over the fact that he was a MMA fighter, if that's even true at all. Now, maybe there's some of you out there who are like, I trained with this dude had 50,000 fights. I'm just letting you know, based off of what I looked for, I didn't find shit about this dude being an MMA fighter. The only reason that you would even know in any of these articles, including the one on bloodyelbow.com, is just because they said it. They was like, yeah, this guy's an MMA fighter. All right, well, what's his record? Where did he fight? Was he amateur? Was he pro? Because this is representing the martial arts industry. The fact that this person is an MMA fighter is representing MMA. And so what happens is whenever you have all these people who are doing things like murdering prostitutes randomly, it looks bad for MMA. But if he wasn't an MMA fighter and he just trained in a gym, he's not an MMA fighter. He just goes to a gym. Whenever these articles label shit like that, MMA fighter, like, was he? Because I don't see it. I've never been an MMA fighter. I don't have no reason to lie about that. I've never fought MMA. Have I trained in MMA gyms? Have I trained with fighters? Have I been a striking coach for MMA fighters? Yes, but have I myself stepped into that cage and fought another person? No, I haven't. So why would these articles go out of their way to label a janitor an MMA fighter if he Doesn't seem to have any fights whatsoever that I could personally find. Now, when you type in his full name, nothing pops up. When you type in things like, half of his name, other things pop up, but there's not anything concrete that I could find. Nothing concrete that I could be like, yo, that dude was an MMA fighter. He fought pro or he fought amateur. He fought under this promotion. I could find nothing. So that kind of brings us to the end here. Kind of brings us to the closing point of all of this. If someone does these horrific things and they're mislabeled to represent the martial arts industry, don't you think it kind of makes the martial arts industry, look bad? Or the MMA industry look bad? I think it does. And if this person wasn't an actual fighter and just trained in a gym, we need to stop labeling them like they are. I mean, there's a difference between someone who trains in an MMA gym and someone who is an MMA fighter. In my opinion, based off the information that I have, this dude's way more janitor than he is MMA fighter. So that's how it should have been labeled, so that way we don't start making our industry look horrific, or more horrific than we already do with people who already do terrible shit in our industry who are fighters. But with that said, I'm curious what your thoughts are about this. Make sure that you drop them in the comment sections below. As always, thank you all for the likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, and all that other crap people online tell you to do. Keep the martial arts legit.
Things just haven't been the same. Living strange since my baby joined that dojo. Joined a McDojo. Now she tried.